On today's Join Us in France, what to do if you need a doctor while in France. This is Join Us in France, episode 133. Bonjour, I'm Annie, and today I'm doing another solo episode because I wanted to answer a question that Ashley Mosley asked on the Join Us in France closed group. She wrote, Annie Sargent, I'm just now listening to the Moving to France episode. That was 131, I think. And it's wonderful. I'm only part way, though, and I'm enjoying glimpses into French life. I think individual episodes on some of the topics you discussed would be great. An example would be what to do if you need a doctor while on vacation in France. Thank you so much for the question, Ashley. I will take a crack at it today. Today, at the end of the episode, after the closing credits, I will share with you the sounds of me going to get bread at my local bakery in my village near Toulouse. Since I went right at noon, you hear the sounds of the church bells and the customers entering the bakery. You know, it's very mundane for me, but if you don't live in France, I think it'll be cool for you. This week, I would like to thank Jacqueline Louise Whitman for being a new Patreon supporter this week. I am inching closer to my goal, and I appreciate each and every one of you who support the show via Patreon, whether you started this week or in previous weeks. Thank you. For the cost of a cup of coffee each month, you can also get exclusive bonus content, Lunch Break French, where I teach you some French that will be particularly helpful to you next time you're in France. So check out my Patreon page by going to patreon.com/join us. That's Patreon. And join us is without any spaces. This week, I also need to thank Rachel Perozin and also someone else who wishes to remain anonymous for their one-time donation through the Tip Your Guide button on the Join Us in France website. Thank you very much, Rachel and Anonymous, for your support. Anonymous also says that she's talked to several people about the show, and that's gold right there. Thank you so much for talking to your friends about the show. I've also noticed an uptick in the number of people using the Amazon affiliate link and the other links on the website. There are affiliate links that I've talked about in previous shows. Thank you so much for doing that. And to support the show that way, click on the Amazon link on your show notes or go to joinusinfrance.com/support. For show notes and photos, go to joinusinfrance.com/133, the number 133. Okay, I want to briefly mention the tour. It's coming along. We're so close we can taste it. The thing is, when you start selling stuff, you need to have a website that can sell stuff. And the Join Us in France website, it's wonderful, and I'm very proud of all the information that's on there, but it's getting to be full of too much stuff. And so adding commercial type activity on there it just didn't make a lot of sense. So what I thought I should do is I bought a very clever website name, and I started developing a new website on there. And I'm not ready to reveal it yet because it's not ready for you to see. Anyway, I grossly underestimated the time that it was going to take to develop this new website and learn all the new technologies and all the new things that I needed to know about to put together a commercial website. Now I know how to do a podcast. Well, start over again with a website for tours. So it's been fun. It's been very challenging, but it took a long time. So I'm almost ready to launch the site, and you'll be the first to know. At any rate, the tour is going to be May 14th through the 21st, and you will have details very, very soon. As a matter of fact, I'm hoping next week. Keeping my fingers crossed. Wish me luck. Ooh, and I almost forgot, but this is important. I would really like it if you would take 30 seconds and take a survey. It's the typical survey that just asks your age and your gender and that basic stuff. It'll take no more than 30 seconds. It's got 5 questions, I think. To take that survey, look at on your show notes. There's a link right there. And thank you so much. All right, so let's get into the meat of today's subject. 14 things you need to know about seeing a doctor in France. What happens when you get sick in France? You see a doctor. That's what happens. I know, I'm such a comedian. Now, let me be a little bit more specific because you've probably heard all sorts of horrible things about socialized medicine. And even if you haven't, it's frightening to think that you may get sick away from home. So, first of all, let's be real. The reality is you may get sick even if you're very healthy before you set off because airplanes, they make us sick. We share bugs and you arrive in a new environment, which is home to new bugs, the ones that you haven't been in contact with before. So you might get sick. Or it might be something like Gary Turco, who was on episode 130 on Romantic Paris. You remember? He had an allergic reaction, probably to some snails that he ate for the first time in his life. Now, he didn't need a doctor. Benadryl did the trick for him, but you never know. So it's good to know what to do if you get sick in France. Let's talk about some specific cases. Case number 1, you're in an accident. Well, people around you will call the French equivalent of 911, and that number in France is the number 15. That's for the SAMU. That's medical. We have the number 17 for police, 18 for firefighters. And these numbers have been in place for as long as there's been telephones. So French people know those. But you probably can't remember all of those, and you don't have to. All you need to remember is 112. That's the European emergency number. For every sort of emergency, it works like 911. They ask you some questions and they send the right people to you. So that's 112. 112. If you need urgent medical attention, they will dispatch the SAMU, which is the medical, and that stands for Service d'Aide Médicale d'Urgence, or another similar service called SOS Médecin, so SOS Doctor. I mean, that's like pretty self-explanatory, isn't it? Both the SAMU and SOS Médecin have a doctor and a nurse on board, and they sometimes do extensive work on the patient at the site of the accident. So if there's a SAMU or SOS Médecin ambulance blocking your way, you better find another way around it because they might not move for a long time. Now, both SAMU and SOS Médecin are not the only ambulance services in France. You will see lots of other ambulances with, they're driving around with various names, but those are mostly patient transportation services and they don't have a doctor on board. They're just taking people to dialysis or medical exams or whatever, and they rarely have a reason to have their sirens on, but sometimes they do. And speaking of sirens, what do you do when you hear sirens in France? You pull over to the side of the road and let them pass. That is no different than what you do in America. Okay, case number 2. You haven't been in an accident. You're just feeling unwell. It's not urgent, but you're feeling unwell. Stop by a pharmacy first. French pharmacists are well trained and they love helping people with a particular problem because, they spent years going to medical school and most of the day they just sell pills. So it's not that gratifying. So when somebody asks them for help with an actual problem, you can see the twinkle in their eyes and they will do whatever they can to help you. And unlike Google, they are trained to give medical advice, so you can listen to them. They also know when you should go see a doctor. And if you're very nice, they might even tell you the name of a local doctor, maybe the address, phone number. They might even make the appointment for you, So go talk to a pharmacist. Now, pharmacists are not allowed to dispense certain medications without a prescription. pretty much, if you can't get it in the US without a prescription, you won't be able to get it in France either. Do not insist. This is not one of those countries where anything goes. Now, I've known about pharmacists who make exceptions, but they always have a very good reason. For instance, if you have a type 1 diabetic who runs out of insulin and he explains whatever that his bag got stolen, whatever, they're probably going to give you whatever you need to until you can see a doctor. But that's not the same as trying to give them a sob story about why you need some pain meds or whatever. So yeah, don't insist. Case number 3. You know you need to see a doctor, but you don't know how to find one. There's 2 major ways to find one. One is the yellow pages. pagejaune.fr. There will be a link in the show notes for that, but it's the same words, yellow pages, page jaune. And you can enter the search term médecin généraliste prendre rendez-vous. And rendezvous is abbreviated RDV. I'll put it in the show notes. You can go see it on joinusinfrance.com/133. I'm pretty sure it's 133. So you enter this key term and your city name. And if you're in a big city, you should really enter the street name and the zip code, or you'll get too many results. And then you call them. You may or may not find somebody on the other end of the line who speaks English with you, but remember that try whatever French you do know. It will go a long way. And at the very least, say bonjour. It will help. The other thing you can do is ask the front desk. If you're staying at a hotel, the better hotels have a relationship with a doctor who will make house calls or will make the appointment for you if you want to go. You will pay more for a house call, but it also makes your life simpler. So it's your call. A third possibility is if you are staying at an Airbnb, you may have a host. You can ask the host or you can ask the neighbors. Okay, so finding a doctor, it's just like in America. You have to find the phone number and make an appointment. It's really not that different. Now, 14 things that you need to know to understand the French healthcare system. Number 1, in France, the insurance is socialized. And I'm insisting on the insurance because Americans seem to be really, it doesn't matter how I explain it. They don't understand the difference between the insurance and the medical work that gets done. Those are 2 different things. Blue Shield, Blue Cross is not the same as your hospital or your doctor. Well, it's the same. So in France, Blue Shield, Blue Cross is socialized. We have a massive health insurance system that's run by the government, but the people who provide medical services, so the doctors, the pharmacists, the lab technicians, etc., they are in private practice. And we even have nurses who are in private practice in France, and they make house calls, which I don't think that's common in America. So I have to really insist, it's the insurance that's socialized, not the providers. In England, for example, the doctors are paid by the state. In France, the vast majority of doctors are not paid by the state. There are a few exceptions, and I'll go into that in just a minute. So, the paper pushers, the insurance companies, yes, they work for the government, not the doctors. The massive healthcare insurance system is called Sécurité Sociale, which stands for Social Security. Now, in America, Social Security is a retirement thing. In France, it's a healthcare thing. Nowadays, it's called CPAM, C-P-A-M, and it stands for something long that you don't need to know. It insures most people in France. There are exceptions, of course. This is France. Everything has to be complicated. If you want the details, I'll put a link in the show notes on where you can go read about who gets insurance from what. But the big one is CPAM. Number 2, French doctors still make house calls. Not as much as they used to, but it's still the thing over here. Mostly house calls are reserved for the elderly or the immunocompromised patients. But once you have a good relationship with the doctor, they'll probably do a house call if you have a good reason. even if it's a temporary good reason. Number 3, most doctors have answering service to make their appointments, some to choose to have an online scheduling system type of thing. And sometimes you don't need an appointment to see a doctor. Some doctors still do first come, first serve on specific days where people just show up and wait. It's not so common anymore, but if it says consultation sans rendezvous, it means you go and wait your turn. So that's consultation without an appointment. Consultation sans rendezvous. Number 4, and I've mentioned this before, but I gotta say it again. Doctors in France are in private practice. They are not paid by the government. And as a patient, you can choose to go to any doctor you like. You can change doctors whenever you want. If you're on the French health insurance system, you have to declare that change, but it's no big deal. In England, I know that you have to go to your neighborhood doctor. At least it was when I lived there. That's never been the case in France, probably never will be the case in France. Number 5. Most French doctors do not have staff. The system is set up so that a doctor can open up a new practice or take over an existing practice and run it alone. I'm talking about general practitioners here. Specialists often pool together and hire secretarial staff or whatever, but they don't have to. I know specialists who work by themselves. What they do not have, what you will not find at your average French doctor's office is a nurse to take your vitals, for example, and billing staff to take your money. The doctor will check your vitals and you will pay your doctor directly at the end of your visit. They might not accept credit cards. Ours does, but some don't. So since you're a visitor, you probably won't have a French checkbook. So bring some cash just in case. You should also ask for a facture, which is an invoice, if you plan on getting reimbursed by your insurance at home. But most people find it's not even worth doing because it's 23 euros. Like, why fill the mountains of paperwork that they're going to put you through in America to get the 23 euros back? I mean, some people will, but most people won't. Number 6. When you see a French doctor, you may be asked for your carte vitale. It's a green card with a tiny ID photo on it, and it has a chip in it, and that chip talks to the national insurance system and lets them know that you've seen a doctor. And that same green card triggers reimbursements. So when you're at the doctor's office, you pay for your consultation. Generally, it's 23 euros. And then when the doctor puts your card in, that triggers 23 euros back. It's not exactly 23 euros. You get back, I think, 18 or something. And then you can have top-up insurance if you want to get the rest of it back. Most people have top-up insurance. But since you're just a visitor, you don't care about that. So the doctor will ask you for your carte vitale. You don't have one. That's fine. You just tell them, I don't have one. You pay outright. You pay your 23 euros and you're done. Number 7, how much will you pay? Well, I just told you. A regular office visit to a general practitioner is 23 euros right now. Some doctors charge more because they are independent provider of medical services. They can decide how much they want to charge. I've seen as much as 50 euros for a general practitioner. I've never seen more than that, but there's probably some that charge way more than that. If they charge more, they have to display their fees in the waiting room. Specialists charge more. It can be as much as 100 euros depending on the specialty. Why is healthcare so cheap in France? Well, it's called the power of negotiation. The National Health Insurance negotiates rates, and because French people are used to not paying fortunes for healthcare, most people, they choose a doctor that charges a basic rate. If you have a reason to go to a doctor that charges more, there are people who do it, but it's really uncommon. But doctors don't have to charge the basic rate. They can ask whatever they want, but if they want to be busy, that's what they're going to charge, the 23 euros for a general practitioner, and it's usually around 50 for a specialist. Number 8, hospitals are, of course, quite a bit more, but nothing like in the US. For example, we took my father-in-law to an emergency room for a CAT scan, which ended up costing us only 300 euros. A friend of ours got hit by a car on his bike and was taken to the hospital by an ambulance. Spent the night in the hospital. He got stitches and a cast, and he paid about 1,000 for everything. Another friend who spent a few days in the hospital, he had lots and lots of really specific blood work done before determining that he'd picked up a parasite in his travels before he arrived to us in France. And that was about 2,500 euros for the hospital and the treatment. And thankfully, it got rid of the bug. He ended up being fine, but he did have to stay in the hospital a few days. So, hospitals will send you the bill after you go home. Unlike the private doctor, where I told you you just pay your private doctor, the hospital sends you the bill after you go home. It's on the honor system. They do not take any money up front. Think about this for a second. You're sick, you have some parasites, you can't hold water down or food, you're looking like the Walking Dead, which is what our friend looked like when he arrived at our house. And I was like, okay, you're going to the doctor right now. This is not normal. And they didn't ask for anything. They didn't ask him for any, I told him he's an American. He's not in the French healthcare system. They didn't say, oh, will you guarantee? No, nothing like that. They took care of him for pretty much a week and got him back to his normal self, and they didn't take any money from him, or they didn't even take a credit card in print, if that's still a thing. I don't even know if that still exists. So the system is based on trust and wanting to help people. And also they were worried that what he had might be really something terrible. And so they had him in isolation right away and all that, It was a scary thing. He had been around places where they were a little worried about him. Number 9, because French doctors don't charge very much money, they also do not have fancy-looking offices. When I go to my doctor's office, there's a plain waiting room. I ring the doorbell to let him know I've come in. I sit in the waiting room. Usually there's other people in there. I say bonjour to everybody. Of course, don't forget. And I wait until it's my turn. Then he comes out and, he walks every customer out to the front door. Then he comes get me, shakes my hand, and we sit at his desk for a little bit. And it really looks like an office desk. He's got some books on the shelves and an iMac on the desk and office supplies and a printer and all that. We chat for a while about what brings me, whatever we have to discuss. Then we go into the examination room. He takes my vitals, checks me some more. We discuss usually he doesn't like to discuss the diagnosis when we're in the examination room because it's not comfortable for the patient. So we sit back at his desk and we talk again. And sometimes a consultation like this will go on for 20 minutes. It's not unusual to be with a doctor for 20 minutes, which in America has never happened to me, even when I was, going through some difficult stuff. So it's a very nice change. But on the other hand, there are no fresh flowers, there's no beautiful paintings, no gorgeous chandeliers. It's kind of plain and not very big. So don't expect, to be dazzled by the beauty of the place. It doesn't happen that way. And number 10, the same goes for French hospitals. I walked into one of the 2 large public hospitals in Toulouse after living in the US for so long. I was a little bit startled, actually. But then I read the Wikipedia page about how the rates of infection contracted while in the hospital, they are actually lower in France than in the US. So it's not near as pretty, but it's clean where it matters. So, okay, good. Number 11. Let me mention the difference between a publicly run hospital and a clinic. You will find both in France. Many more clinics, as a matter of fact. Clinics are privately owned. They are there are large corporations that own clinics all over the country. And sadly, some of the large public hospitals in big cities are just ugly. For instance, l'Hôpital de la Timone in Marseille, it can have as many as 1,300 patients at once. And it really looks like the Death Star from a distance. I've never been inside, but from the outside, it looks like no place I'd like to go. But then you have the Hôtel Dieu right by Notre Dame in Paris. And that looks really nice. You can actually walk in and see it for yourself. It's when you're facing Notre Dame, the entrance is just to your left on the Parvis de Notre Dame. So that's a really nice hospital. And so it depends when it was built, you know. The ones built in the 70s are usually just ugly. I don't know what it was with the 70s. Why did you just build ugly stuff? Now, private clinics are much smaller and they work harder at looking nice. But as far as you're concerned as a patient, almost everything else is the same. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. Number 12, doctors who practice at public hospitals are often government employees. See, here are the socialized medicine doctors, but they also teach at the medical school. These are called professor so-and-so and not doctor so-and-so. They are professors, and you can go have a consult, at the Death Star looking hospital to talk to the doctor who actually knows a lot more about your problem than regular doctors because he's a teacher. And so don't let the look of the building fool you. Sometimes you're better off being seen at the ugly hospital by the professor than you are at the nicer looking clinic by somebody who's been out of medical school for 20 years. Number 13, by 2020 in France, more than 50% of doctors will be women. It's almost 50% already in 2016. French people, especially younger French people, prefer to see women doctors. And so your doctor is probably going to be a she, or at least you'll get to choose a female doctor if that's something you care about. Number 14, medical tourism. It is not common in France, whereas it is in Belgium, in Germany, and in the UK, despite the fact that the French medical system ranks highly when compared to these other European neighbors. The French authorities are finally waking up to the fact that they have a surplus of medical talent and that because our prices are so low to begin with, they could charge twice as much and still be extremely competitive on the global scale. So I'll link to an article that talks about that. But you have to understand that this is not really accepted all around because most French people, including most French doctors and nurses and pharmacists, etc., they see healthcare as a fundamental right and not something for profit, even though they are, to them, there's a difference between making a living and making a killing. You know what I mean? And so nobody objects to a doctor having a nice car and a nice house. That's normal. But they object to doctors owning, yachts and whatever. And maybe they have a point. So there are a few companies in France that work as facilitators and consultants for medical tourism. But I don't really know much about them. I just know there's a big one in Toulouse, as a matter of fact. But I have never used them, so I can't really tell you much about it. I do have friends who lived in France for a year, and while they were here, they took the time to do a lot of dental work because they knew that it was so much cheaper than what they could do in the US. And so, there are some Americans who are only here temporarily who take advantage of them being here to just make the medical appointments and do that. But you see, if you don't live here, because very often when you first make an appointment to see, I don't know if you need to see a cardiologist, whatever, the first appointment always takes a while, unless it's your doctor that calls the cardiologist and say, you need to see this person. In that case, you'll be seen in 15 minutes. But if it's just you saying, I need a checkup, Well, it might be a couple months, 3 months, I don't know. It depends on what cardiologist you want to go see. And so if you're only here for a short time, I mean, if it's a year, you have time to establish a relationship. And once you have that relationship with the doctor, subsequent appointments are going to be coming faster. Because that's a question they always ask. Are you a new patient? And most doctors will have, sometimes they only have a day or two in the month where they see new patients. And the rest of the time, it's all old patients and repeat appointments and all of that. And so sometimes, if you're a new patient, well, it's going to be 6 months before you can see this person just because they're not taking new patients. They only, see new patients a day or two out of the month. And I think that's not very well organized. But again, since we have the freedom to go shop around and see another doctor, if you're in a hurry, call around. You'll find another one. But probably as a visitor, none of these things matter to you. And I will just say, if you're feeling sick in France, don't be miserable. Just see a doctor. You'll be surprised how the advice you get is going to be extremely similar to what you would get in the US. Medical school is pretty much the same. And so you don't have to worry about the type of doctor you're going to see. You're going to be well taken care of, and it's not going to break the bank either, which is a nice bonus. All right. Thank you, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you don't get sick at all. But, this is December, and I still have that lingering cold. So I had to think about this. It is the season for disease. Au revoir. Hi, guys. It's Annie again. When you go to joinusinfrance.com, and I hope you do, you will see two important sidebars. The one on the left is there to help you find the information you need. Episodes are categorized by region, for instance, Normandy, Southwest, Paris, Alsace, whatever, but also by show type. There's a category for trip reports, another for transportation, another for food and wine, museums, etc. So if you have an idea what you're looking for but you can't remember the details, you can narrow it down by using the sidebar on the left that says episodes by categories. The sidebar on the right is where you can shop for hotels, car rentals, flights, and earn the show a commission. This is no different than what TripAdvisor does. If you read TripAdvisor reviews and you book a hotel, they get a commission. You pay the same price for that hotel regardless. Well, it's the same for joinusinfrance.com. If you listen to the show and enjoy it, when you are ready to book, go to joinusinfrance.com first, click on those banners on the right of the website, and shop around. This episode is licensed under the Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives International License.
Allez, bonne journée.
Bonne journée à toi aussi.
Alors là, pour le coup.
Ça te dérange. Au revoir. Pardon, merci madame.
Je vous en prie. Vous allez bien? Merci. C'est baguette de pâte. S'il vous plaît.
De tradition avec une céréale. Merci.
Bonjour, 3 traditions, s'il vous plaît.
C'est 8,50 s'il vous plaît. C'est 6,50.
Bonne journée, au revoir. Merci. Encore mieux, merci beaucoup. Bonne journée. Au revoir. Pardon. Merci.